Do you have a paranormal encounter you'd like to share with us? Send us an email with your story for a chance of it being featured on Weird World. In the late 1980s, Julie found herself starting a new chapter of her life in a small one-story house in rural Kansas. Recently emerged from a difficult divorce, she had managed to find a property that fit within her limited budget, with the option to purchase it on payments, making it particularly attractive for a single mother. Living alone with her 8-month-old son, she approached the challenge with determination, despite the property's obvious need for renovation. While the house itself was unremarkable, the events that would occur within its walls over the next decade would challenge everything Julie thought she knew about the supernatural. As someone who had always enjoyed horror movies and ghost stories, Julie approached such tales purely as entertainment. She delighted in the thrill of frightening herself, but maintained a healthy skepticism about actual paranormal phenomena. However, her experiences in this small Kansas home would fundamentally alter her perspective on the existence of spirits, leading her to question her previous dismissal of supernatural possibilities. Some things, she would come to realize, simply couldn't be explained away by rational thought. The house initially presented numerous challenges that demanded immediate attention. The most pressing issue was an infestation of spiders. Not ordinary house spiders, but specimens so large that Julie would later joke they were the size of house cats. These enormous creatures had claimed every corner and cranny of the house, making their presence known whenever Julie attempted to dust or paint a wall. The renovation process proved to be a months-long endeavour of scrubbing, painting, and furnishing the space with second-hand items. Despite the frustration and physical demands of the work, she gradually transformed the modest dwelling into a cosy home that radiated a surprisingly cheerful atmosphere. Through sheer determination and countless hours of labour, what had started as a somewhat shabby property evolved into a cute little cottage she could truly call home and be proud of. The strange occurrences had begun almost immediately after they moved in, though they never felt threatening. The first signs manifested in the mysterious disappearances of everyday items, particularly car keys. Julie would spend hours methodically searching the house for her keys, which would always turn up in plain sight as soon as she threw up her hands and muttered about giving up, declaring she didn't want to go out anyway. One particularly memorable incident involved the keys materializing on the designated pegboard, a spot she had checked multiple times during her search. This pattern became such a common occurrence that it turned into a family joke. When things disappeared in Julie's house, they would show up when the ghost was done playing with them. Even Julie's parents weren't exempt from these paranormal pranks during their visits, with their own keys and personal items vanishing only to resurface in improbable locations, including on one memorable occasion inside the refrigerator. Given that Julie's son was only 8 months old at the time, there was no possibility of these incidents being the result of a child's mischief. As time passed, the mysterious presence seemed to evolve from a playful trickster to a protective guardian. During one particularly severe storm, Julie was in the back of the house conducting a routine check for roof leaks. As she examined the ceiling, she distinctly heard someone call her name from the front room. The voice was clear enough that she fully expected to find a friend seeking shelter from the weather when she made her way through the living room. Finding it empty was puzzling enough, but the true significance of the phantom voice became immediately apparent when, moments later, lightning struck the tree in the backyard, sending it crashing through the ceiling of the very room she had just left. The mysterious call had, without question, saved her from severe injury or death. The presence became even more intriguing when Julie's son learned to talk. He began making regular references to the Grey Man, casually mentioning sightings as if they were perfectly ordinary occurrences. "Look at the Grey Man, Mommy," or "I saw the Grey Man again today, Mommy," became common refrains in their household. Like many busy parents juggling numerous responsibilities, Julie initially dismissed these comments as a product of a child's mind at play, responding with distracted "yes dear" responses and assuming it was just another imaginary friend. However, one night would prove her assumptions dramatically wrong. After putting her son to bed one evening, with only his nightlight casting a dim glow that partially illuminated the hallway, Julie was walking to her bedroom while contemplating which book to read before sleep. As she approached her bedroom door, she experienced a sensation that anyone who had nearly collided with another person would recognize: that sudden awareness of a presence directly in front of you. She instinctively stepped backwards, and there he stood, a figure that would remain vivid in her memory for years to come. Even years later, Julie found that she could close her eyes and see him clearly, every detail as sharp as if it was on their first and final encounter. The apparition appeared as a gentleman dressed in a grey suit, wearing a bowler hat with a gold fob watch prominently displayed. His posture suggested a refined nature, with hands clasped behind his back as he rocked slightly on his heels, appearing to study Julie as she was studying him. Most striking was his expression, a pleasant, welcoming smile beneath a thick, old-fashioned moustache. His appearance was so precise and detailed that it reminded Julie of a member of a barbershop quartet. Before she could fully process what she was seeing, the figure gave a slight bow of acknowledgement and vanished into thin air. Julie's immediate reaction was to flip on the lights and attempt to rationalise what she's just witnessed. As she sat on the edge of her bed, she cycled through various explanations: exhaustion, stress, or an overactive imagination. However, the detailed nature of what she'd seen, particularly the Pacific period clothing and the fob watch, made it difficult to dismiss as a mere hallucination. She reasoned that if her mind were to conjure up an apparition, it certainly wouldn't create something as specific as a Victorian-era gentleman, complete with period-appropriate accessories. She found herself laughing at the realization that her first instinct upon nearly walking through the apparition had been to politely say, "Excuse me," as if encountering a Victorian gentleman in a hallway, and was a perfectly ordinary occurrence. In that moment, Julie knew she had finally met their mischievous housemate, the entity behind all the vanishing objects and mysterious occurrences, and the very same grey man her son had been seeing all along. Following this encounter, the frequency of mysterious occurrences decreased, though they didn't cease entirely. Julie would occasionally find herself addressing the ceiling, asking with familiar exasperation for the return of missing keys or shoes. But perhaps most remarkably, there were several instances where they would leave their dog indoors while going out for a few hours, only to return home and find the pet outside. This was particularly puzzling since Julie was the only one with a key to the house and all windows were securely closed. While some of these incidents might have had conceivable mundane explanations, there were at least 3 specific occasions where Julie was absolutely certain the dog had been asleep on her bed as they were leaving, ruling out the possibility that it had snuck outside before she locked the door. She often wished she could communicate with her pet about these incidents, wondering what the dog might reveal about its interactions with their supernatural housemate. Over the years, Julie noticed that their ghostly resident seemed particularly focused on ensuring the safety and well-being of the household. Despite living in a neighbourhood that occasionally hosted some questionable characters, she and her son always felt secure within their home. The combination of playful pranks and protective interventions created an atmosphere where the supernatural presence felt more like a guardian than an intruder. The presence became such an accepted part of their household that when Julie became engaged and realised she would need to sell the house, she felt genuine sadness at the prospect of leaving their supernatural housemate behind. During her final visit to the empty house, after the furniture had been sold and only a few boxes remained to be packed, she took a moment to stand in the living room and reflect. Throughout all the years of living alone with her son, and having been saved from the falling tree during that storm, there'd always been a sense of protection within those walls. As she prepared to leave for the last time, she took a private moment to acknowledge their mysterious housemate. Standing in the living room of the now empty house, surrounded by the memories of countless inexplicable but largely benevolent events, she spoke a simple thank you into the room. Just then, both light bulbs in the kitchen went out simultaneously. This final playful gesture served as a fitting farewell from her spirit that had been more friend than phantom, more protector than poltergeist. As Julie prepared to document her experiences in October 1999, looking back on more than a decade spent in that Kansas home, she reflected on how she transformed from a skeptic into someone who accepted that some experiences simply do not fit with the neat assumption we make about the world. Her encounter with the grey man stands as a remarkable example of a benevolent haunting where a spirit seemed more interested in protecting and playful interacting with the home's residents than in causing fear or distress. Through small acts of mischief and moments of protection, the grey man had become an integral part of their lives, challenging preconception about the nature of supernatural encounters and suggesting that not all hauntings need to be feared. As Julie prepared for a move thousands of miles away, she knew she would miss his unconventional guardian who had watched over her family for so many years, always ready with one more playful prank or protective intervention.